Today is our first ever Education on Air conference. Today we have educators holding over 46 Hangouts on Air, leading discussions on a number of topics in education technology. Thanks to all the presenters for giving their time to this, and thanks to all of you for watching today. All of our presenters have early access to Hangouts on Air, a technology that allows you to broadcast and record Hangouts. And to watch any of the sessions today, simply go to the presenter's Google Plus page at the appointed time. You can find a list of all the sessions and links to presenters' Google Plus pages on the conference site, located at sites.google.com/site/EduOnAir. To repeat, that's on sites.google.com/site/EduOnAir. So this session is called Managing Digital ePortfolios. Kern Kelley has been an educational technologist for over 10 years. He teaches at RSU 19 in Central Maine and has conducted professional development at the state, national, and international levels. He is a Google certified teacher and a proud father of 4- and 7-year-old boys who asked what was the next number after Google told him to Google. So with that, I'll let Kern take it away.
Thanks, Jordan. What we'll do first, I think it's worthwhile to go down and kind of introduce ourselves, and we've got a good panel here and talk about where we're from and our interest in portfolios. I have set up a kind of a slide share to go through and go over the steps that we use in our district. But it makes sense, I think, as we're going forward to kind of pause, and as people have questions or different ideas that they want to share, kind of talk about those. So why don't I start right from one end, for me it's left to right, so I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but Paul, if you don't mind, just tell me where you're from and what you're interested in digital portfolios is.
Well, I'm from Norwich in England. Over the last year or so, I've built a couple of different learning platforms for 2 different employers using Google Apps, and all my students share their work with me, and I kind of end up having to manage that one-to-one, which kind of leaves me with a whole host of documents shared with me. So I'm looking basically to sort of develop ways in which I can have that as a more fluid process and have my docs list somewhat less cluttered than it currently is. So I kind of get the high-level point of view, but I just kind of want to see the nuts and bolts of how I can put it together.
Great, thanks. Mike, nice to see you.
Okay. It's new for me. Okay. My name is Mike Arsenault from Yarmouth, Maine, and we've been using portfolios with our Google Apps for Ed domain now with our teachers for 2 years, and starting to use it with students as well. So just kind of curious to see what others are using and how they're using it to work with Google Apps.
I should introduce, I do have a student with me today. This is one of our kids that he's going through the process right now. Chris, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your aspects of digital portfolios and how they affect you.
Hi everyone, I'm Christopher Edmond, and like Mr. Kelley said, I go here at Nokomis, and I'm one of the students who actually has to put their portfolios together, and I love it because now I have something even better to show at a college interview. I'm always looking towards the future, and ownership of my work now shows that I want to show off my work, so this is a great place to do that.
Jill?
Hi, I'm Jill, and I teach at a school in Atlantic Beach, Florida, and our school it's my first year at the school, but it's kind of needing some retrofitting with technology, and there hasn't been any digital portfolios been used, so I'm just going to set up my first grade classroom as a model and looking for ideas. And I've done a lot with portfolios over the years, but trying to build from what we have to see what other people are doing.
Great, thanks. And finally, Allison? Nope, you're muted, Allison.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I concur with Jill in the sense that I've been working with portfolios since I started teaching over 13 years ago, and knowing how much it powers kids and how into how much it can motivate the whole learning process. The challenge has been finding a venue for portfolio and then implementing it in so that teachers and students can adopt it easily. And Google has provided that for us in the district. And now that we're able to see that and implement some of it, I would like to know more about how other people are managing the rollout and access to the portfollios.
Great, thank you all very much. So my plan here is to do a screen share. I'm going to go through kind of like I said, a slideshow of some of the tips and tricks and stuff that we've come up with. As you mentioned, we've been doing portfolios now for as long as I've been in this district, and it's always been the holy grail is to get to the place where it's totally digitized. The kids are in charge of what's going on, and we're looking at it and we're kind of using it as well. And finally, I feel like it's got to the place now with some of the Google tools that we can actually kind of accomplish that. So let me pull this up. Let's see, I'll pull up my right here. All the presentations, the different forms that we use, different tools like spreadsheets that set up, will all be available. As we go forward, if you have questions, you guys, if you have comments, or if Jordan, if you notice there's any questions or comments in the chat, please just throw them out there and we'll pause and we'll kind of talk about that. That'd be great. So let's start with this slideshow here. A little about myself. So first of all, the question that I asked ourselves when we started, like, who's the portfolio for? And typical answer is, we basically cut it down to two different types of portfolios. Traditionally, there's usually like a folder, like a manila folder somewhere, or there has been in the back of the room somewhere that a teacher kind of owns it and really controls it. And of course, the drawback with that is kids don't have any ownership at all of this. This is something that they know they have this portfolio thing, it's somewhere out there, but they're not sure what they're supposed to do with it or if they're supposed to do anything with it. So the idea of kids taking ownership of this is really important. We cut it up in two different ways. A portfolio for the educational system, which is, for example, what we are looking for as teachers and administrators. We need to see so many things at the end of the year that they've accomplished. They've met standards and they've done this work. And at the same time, students themselves, they have different ideas. What they're the things that they're interested in. Yes, they need to do all this work, but they may have specific things that they want to highlight. For example, when they graduate, as Chris mentioned earlier, we go to college. If they're going for science, maybe they want to highlight their science stuff, or if they're going for art, maybe they want to highlight more their artistic side. So at that point, it becomes like a personal showcase for students. And so the idea is, do we have to have either or can we have both? And the system that I've really focused on setting up in our district, K through 12, is really kind of go through the steps of managing it so that the teachers can get the pieces that we need as educators, and the students can build their own kind of personal showcase. Now, ideally, the student does most of the work building the portfolio, at the same time providing the educational system the information that it needs. So here's a quick kind of run through kind of the steps, if you will, that we use, kind of a step-by-step. So the first step is students digitizing their work. Now, that's not trivial, especially at the elementary levels. When you're talking, K to, let's say, 4th or 5th grade, typically it's going to be a lot of work on the teacher side to digitize their work if it's not already digital. You don't have a lot of, kindergartners necessarily typing papers. But at the same time, I'll show you some videos and kind of like a highlight reel that I have of different ways that we've accomplished this, ways we've had it so non-digital things can be easily, hopefully, digitized, and then that goes into the stream. The next step is we use Google Docs, now called Google Drive, as kind of our glut folder, where all the stuff goes to. So in that process, kids basically take ownership of that. At some point, kids get in the habit of they're going to digitize their work, they're going to put into their accounts, and that's what it's going to store. This, of course, is kind of managed by the teacher. They collect it, and I'll show you some examples of that, how we can collect work and do it in a way that's not crazy for the teacher. It gets too much of a workload. So teachers are able to collect their work, and in the same time, the students are already digitizing it. And then finally, the last step is the students make their what we call a web portfolio or their web page. We actually do a thing in our district where we buy every student their own domain name. For example, Chris, the student that you see here, chrisredmond.com, will go to his web portfolio that he's building as he goes. A little bit different than the educational portfolio. That's really for us as a system. But the web portfolio is for them to take with them. It's kind of the equivalent of a 21st century business card. This is what they would take with them when they go off to college or go off to job interviews or whatever they want to do. They have their web domain. We purchase that for a year, and then at that point, it's on to them. They want to keep it on and pay for it and use it from then on. I did include a video, I'm not going to play it right now, but of different portfolio types. This talks a little bit about this. One thing to kind of think about in this way, kind of like the 3 steps, we use, as I mentioned earlier, the docs as a repository for everything. And because now with Google Drive, that just makes it more obvious or more even easier, with the sense that it's not just the documents created, it's also pretty much anything that's digitized can be stored there. I will say this let me jump back for a second. One thing that we've done other systems before, other portfolio systems, you know, Moodle and that's kind of a portfolio system, but Haiku and some of these other ones, Saki. And I will say that having the ability to create the work in the system initially, which Google provides, is a huge aspect of this. They can create a document or a spreadsheet or a presentation or whatever it is into the structure. So when you take a document that a student's created, like an essay or something, and you're going to put that into their portfolio, it's literally a click, and there it is. You know, I mean, it's not a lot of extra work, and that friction, removing that friction, has been absolutely huge to make it successful. I think that's one of those things that some of these other systems that they just, can it be done? Absolutely, but is it done? And it's just another step for teachers to do. So every time you can remove those steps, it just makes it that much easier and that much more likely it's going to actually happen. And again, going from the steps of the kids digitizing their work to we looking at it as a system, and that final step of publishing it publicly, again, is not a huge thing because it's already digitized. It's a click away from being public. You know, I mean, it's really easy as far as those steps go.
And Kern, just to jump in, I'm seeing a few questions come in already.
Great.
Thomas Ho asked, I'm mostly interested in how students' social streams can be captured to add value to their digital portfolios. So can you speak to anything around how social streams can be integrated in the portfolio world?
Sure. What I will do right now, actually I was going to say this, but this is a good time to play it. I have a short video, it's only a minute long, that is kind of a highlight reel of some of the ways that we digitize our non-digital work. This has some younger kids, some elementary level kids, some high school kids, and some middle school kids. You can kind of see different examples of that. And it's just meant to show, like, again, putting it onto the students themselves, but at the same time, getting that process. And the social piece may be a little bit harder as far as things that are not specifically assignments or assessments, but it's something that we certainly can build in. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to pull this up here. All right, let's see if we can see this. What would you tell them next year? What would you tell the kids?
That you'll have to do lots and lots of details to do it.
I see. Why do you think you have to do a lot of details?
Because you want, like, all the parents to, like, wow.
That's great. Thank you. So I don't know if you guys could hear that last student. Let me pull this off. He was a first grader last year, and they presented some of the work they've done, and we had a student come down and help videotape it and record it and share with their parents. And it's so obvious to a first grader that when you have that kind of audience, that real audience, parents and teachers, that kind of stuff, you're going to put a lot more into it. You're going to be more, very serious about making sure that it's your best quality work. And that's part of the aspects of the portfolio that kind of the payoff of all the time and energy and work you put into it. The trade-off is that you're going to get, hopefully, better quality work because the kids know that it's going to be there, it's going to be kind of shown, and you can kind of publish it as you need and do that. So I think that, those type of pieces, every one of those examples, I have full videos if they want to I can put in the show notes, as far as like, on each one of those, like for example, phys ed, recording video, or artwork, recording still images. And again, very important that the students are doing all of that. It's not another thing for the teacher to do. It's something that the students themselves are doing their piece of it, recording their piece, and then they're handing it in virtually. Let me go back. Okay. Does anyone else want to pipe up at this point as far as thoughts and questions and additions?
I'll defer to the people in the Hangout first before I go to the streams.
Yep.
All right. Oh, go ahead, Kern.
Hey, Chris, what do you think? You live this. What do you think about this process?
The digitization. It's definitely a lot more students than teachers now. Like it always used to be. Like honestly, I don't think I ever knew I had a portfolio until about 8th grade when they gave them we got our 5th and 6th grade portfolios, and it was just a big pack of paper that once you got home, chucked in the trash. So I mean that's all gone now. But now that we have this digitization, then now it's all going to be on our portfolio, so we can see. If, like I said, if you go to a college interview, then if they want to see more of you, they're gonna be able to literally go down to what you did in 7th grade for this paper, so they know that if they see a work ethic throughout this, they definitely know that they're gonna get a better. You can't read everything from a resume, is what I'm kind of trying to get at.
We had a student this year who our middle school kids record themselves for chorus, and there's a lot of students in our chorus program, I don't know, 100 or so. And so the chorus teacher said, I can't possibly listen to each student individually during class time. It would take the entire class every day. So the kids recorded themselves singing a certain piece, uploaded to their own web portfolio, and they shared that web portfolio with the teacher. And they went through, and the teacher could listen to them at their leisure. And I talked to one of the kids, one of the students, and I said, "What do you think about this process?" And this one girl, Emily, very precocious little girl, she said, "Mr. Kelley, this was fine, but it was a lot easier on us when Mr. Lancaster did all the work." And of course, that's the idea, right? That the teacher kind of does all the legwork of this, chasing around, and we kind of shift that to the students, so they're taking control of their portfolios and make it more meaningful.
We'll try to sneak in a few more questions here before we continue. So one question from Erica Hartman. Awesome job.
Hi, Erica. We are 1-to-1 7th and 8th grade, and actually the entire state of Maine, luckily, is 1-to-1 7th and 8th grade. We are not quite 1-to-1 at the high school level, and we're not 1-to-1 below that. And that's, to be honest, to be perfectly frank, one of the beauties of the Google tools is that it doesn't matter what machine you're using, as long as they have internet access. So we have Macs, we have PCs. I think you saw one of the things was a iPod Touch that the kids are using to record. We use other video cameras. We use, sometimes I've had issues where students have their own cell phones that have cameras built into them. They use that as their way to hand stuff in. So it doesn't really matter as long as you have internet access. You're not device specific. I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then a couple of questions about the age level. At what age level do you start having the students use their first and last name? Michelle Gerbrick wanted to know.
Good question. We actually use what we call avatar names. So we use nicknames that the kids come up with. And when we actually have accounts. Now, they're not using them. We have accounts all the way down to pre-K. And again, our pre-K students aren't logging in and using them. What's happening, though, is if a teacher has something that they want to record or take a picture of their work or whatever and store it, we're storing it in these accounts so that by the time they get up to older grades, they'll have their older stuff. And ultimately, their parents, I mean, I know personally, I'd love to have video of my child reading from a pre-K, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, all the way up through to show that. How amazing would that be? And if it can be just part of the process we do, then it's not a lot of extra work. Specifically to the students, what was the question again as far as the using the younger kids?
At what age level do you start having the students use their first and last name?
The reason why we use avatar names, we have them pick their own avatar names. And what happens is if you're a 5th grader or a 4th grader and pick an avatar name, it's usually pretty silly, right? I mean, it's, they have a lot of colors and animals, maybe red monkey or something kind of silly like that. And we do that for 2 reasons. One is I want to get the habit of not using their real name anywhere online at that age. So when they go home and they make their own Facebook account or whatever they're making, even if they're not supposed to legally, they are using a nickname. They know, you know what, I don't have to use my real name online. I can use a nickname. Nobody else will know who I am. And what happens invariably is by the time that they get from 5th grade up to, let's say, 8th grade, they hate that name. They've had it for 4 years. It's a silly name. They don't like it anymore. And I want them to go through that, a little bit of that pain, because at the high school level, they're actually going to pick their quote-unquote real name, the name they're going to use. So this is 9th grade now. And at that point, I don't want them to pick a name that they're going to not like 4 years from now. And I also don't want them to pick a name that they're going to not be professional. What kind of the genesis of all this was, I had a student who showed me their resume, and they were going to go for a job interview, and the resume was fine. It looked very professional, but their email address was hotmama23 or something like that, something silly, right? And I said, you realize that's all that your prospective employer is going to see is that name. So you want to think about your avatar name or your name you use. That becomes a representation of you. And by having the kids go through that process of a little bit of pain at the end, they realize, oh, you know what, I need to be serious about this.
Yeah, and that's something, a little bit of what we're trying to do in the K-12 space at Google. My colleague Becky Evans, who I think will be co-presenting on other sessions today, one thing she tries to encourage schools to think about is fostering this idea of digital citizenship, in the 21st century for all students. One of our senior education evangelists, Jamie Cassip, always says, I can't teach my kid not how to walk across the street just because there are cars there. They got to learn how to be safe and look both ways. The same thing applies to technology on the web. Just helping students think about that early on and how they want to present themselves. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's important too to actually put them in the situations that mimic what's going to happen later on. So again, and with the Google tools, it's very great because we make closed gardens where they can make mistakes. They will make mistakes. They're kids, and that's what we're here for as an educational system, to let them make mistakes in a place that it's really a safe place to make a mistake. One of the things that I do with my classes, again, the 5th grades or 4th grades, is I'll pull up a Google spreadsheet and I'll share it with an entire class. And they all realize they can type on it, and everybody can see each other's typing, and it's pretty fun at first. And invariably, some boy in the back corner or something will type something not X-rated, but something inappropriate for the class. And we stop, and I say, look, this is just like you set up in class, and said it out loud. And make a teachable moment of that. Because what happens is if they learn in that very safe, closed garden setting there, then they're less likely to do it later on when it's actually more, hopefully not harmful, but more on the line.
Cool. Well, we'll stop questions for now, but carry on.
I'll pull up that slideshow. We can continue on. I definitely want to make sure I get into a little bit of the how-tos. A couple of questions that people asked before, like, so what are some of the actual steps? Like, what are some of the, the things that we do? So I'll start with this, digitization, as we mentioned, where people just store stuff. The students are storing things. I have some examples, like I mentioned earlier. I have all the different YouTube videos as far as for each example at different levels, pre-K, physical education, 8th grade, high school math, and so forth. One of the benefits, and I do want to throw this out there, so we have a standard in our district, which is students have to read 25 books in a year, and it's quality, quantity, range, and depth. So they can't read 25 of the same kind of book. They have to read kind of different genres and different authors and that kind of thing. And what we've done is traditionally we always had a piece of paper that the kids would fill out and put all the books they've read that year. And of course, at the end of the year, what happened to that piece of paper? Got thrown in the trash can, right? At the end of the year, it didn't matter to them anymore. I could start again next year. One thing we've kind of graduated to is we started using Google Books, which is already part of their account. And in Google Books, you can make a bookshelf. And so what happens is now they're still making that same list as they always did of the books they've read that year. But the difference is they're also building basically a virtual database of all the books they've ever read. I would love to have all the books I've read since 5th grade to now as a searchable database that I could search back and find anytime I want it. I mean, how powerful would that be? And the difference is it's actually building a useful thing for the students, not just an assignment that we do for teachers because we need it, but it's actually building something that's more useful for them later on. The biggest factors as far as how much digitization we can expect of the kids, I think, is their age level. Younger kids, obviously, it's harder for them to do, and access to hardware. If they have one-to-one, if they have, a lab situation, if they have one-to-many or whatever that is, and those kind of all the factors for that. Now sharing. Now I'm going to get a little bit into the nuts and bolts of how we set it up. This isn't the best way. This is just the way we found that works best for us. Specifically, the kids start the year, they get their accounts, they've chosen their avatar names, they have their accounts. They create a collection, and sometimes you hear it called folder. In Google Docs, folder and collection are kind of synonymous, called portfolio. And they share that with a dummy account. We actually create an account called Portfolio, and they share that with that. And that's simply so that anything inside of these folders, I have an account that I can get into easily because they're going to share with the teachers. Inside of that, we create basically subfolders of different subject areas. For example, they may have one for language arts, for math, for science, and for social studies. And each one of those collections, they share with their teacher. So if I'm the English teacher, you're going to share a collection with me, and that's going to be my virtual inbox. I tell the students that you have an inbox in the room. You have usually a physical box that you put your papers into. This is the virtual equivalent of that. They name the box so that the teacher can see their list. The teacher will see a list of however many students they have, 20 or 25 or however many, all of that subject area and the name. And if the teacher wants to, let's say they have multiple periods, they can put in period 1 and put all their students from that course into there, and period 2 and kind of slide them into there. We then use a thing called an assessment collector. I'm actually going to show you what this looks like. It's a Google form. And this is what it looks like from the student's perspective. Now, you can give the kids this link, or you can embed this into your web page, or however you want to do this. But the students come in and they put their information here. They might choose a period. Again, if you're younger grades, if you're like 5th or 6th grade, you may not have periods, but you can adjust that. They choose what the assignment is, and then they copy and paste the link to that assessment. So they created the Google Doc. Let's say it's an essay. They created the Google Doc. They type their essay. They slid it into the folder, which shared with the teacher, and they come back in here and they copy and paste the link to this. What this does is this builds this page here, this tab, which is the entry tab, and then we can filter it. And filtering it does it by, whoops, pull that down here. You can build, you do it by different assignments. So as the students are going along, they can have different assignments, they can have different periods. It's just a more manageable way for the teacher to kind of combine. So instead of having a Google Docs list that has hundreds of different documents in it, but they have trouble finding them, it puts it in a simple place, a simple spreadsheet where they can go through and they say, I only want this assignment, or I want this assignment. The other thing it does is there's a built-in viewer to this, and what the viewer does is it actually pulls up a live iframe that you can go into the document itself and make edits. So instead of even having to leave this spreadsheet, I can look right here and say, okay, I'm going to make this. I can click next, and it'll show me my next document. And then I can come in here and make more edits. So the teacher can actually click here, have all the documents from those students, all whatever the assignment is, if it's a website or if it's a Google Doc or a presentation or a slideshow or whatever it is, and just click next, 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 and they can just use that to kind of more easily collect and assess them. Again, at the same time, the students are digitizing and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I do have on the slideshow a detailed directions. I have a whole page dedicated to all the steps of this. So if you're interested in this, it gives you the copy of the template. It walks you through step by step how to do it. There is one little caveat with it. It doesn't like websites that start with HTTPS instead of HTTP. So you can do a find and replace, or there is a script that's included with it that you can enable, and that way, as the students copy and paste their links, it will automatically take away if they have an HTTPS different than HTTP. Finally, so let's say they've done that throughout the year. They've been collecting their assignment. They've got all their stuff together. The students hand out a virtual portfolio cover sheet. That cover sheet is basically a list of all the things that they should have accomplished for language arts, for math, for science, for social studies. That might be a curriculum list. It might be a core standards list, depending on what you're building, how you're getting that list. And then again, they put those into that. They copy and paste those into that spreadsheet. So basically, it's like a cover sheet for a portfolio, and a teacher can just look at that. And ultimately, the next year's teacher can look at that and say, I want to see what they did last year for language arts for this essay. Click on it, and there it is. And again, I have a video going through all these steps a little bit more slowly. Finally, the last step, as I mentioned earlier, we buy a web domain name for all of our students, so each one, and we forward that to their portfolio. Now, we have our educational portfolio that we've been collecting, and then the next step is that we have the presentation portfolio or showcase that the students are building. They build that from the pieces of what they've been putting together. They also may have extra stuff. They may have more things in there that they didn't include. For example, if they did some big project that they want to include, outside of school, or if they're really into whatever it is that their focus is for, future plans for college or for a job or whatever it is, we want to make sure they highlight that. So like as I said earlier, kind of like a 21st century business card. This is what they'll go when they go to a job interview or a college interview. They might say, go to ChristopherRedmond.com and see what I'm all about. And they've been able to manage that all the way through. And as they graduate, they take that with them. This is kind of what we have. We've had traditionally kind of a big pile of papers, and it's kind of what we want right here. It's a simple web address that they can use. I included the template that we've built as far as like where the kids start from there, and of course they basically take this template and they make it their own. They adjust it, they track it, they do whatever they want to it. The other really important point to this as a final step is, and I didn't include the steps here, but we'll talk about this, is the ability to get out. And actually, let me pull up my video again. Okay. When we looked at different services that can, for digital portfolios, again, there's a number of them out there, or all the web services really. There's, Web 2.0 is everywhere. There's all kinds of different things. It's really crucial for our teachers and for our students the ability to get out of there if they need to or if they want to. So they're not stuck in what we call a data silo. One of my concerns is if we, some services, like you can use their stuff and it's awesome, but once you get in there, to remove your data is not impossible, but it's really difficult. And if it's difficult, it's probably not going to be done. So we want our students to be able to remove, for example, all their Google Docs or all their websites or whatever the pieces that they're trying to remove and take with them. One of the things that we do as a senior year is we have the students remove their work, and then they can re-upload it to their own account, their own personal account that they'll have, moving forward. And that's a whole process where they can do that. So again, they're not tied to us anymore. They've got their stuff that they've been building all along, but it's theirs to take with them. That's probably it for the formalized slideshow of this presentation. You can do more questions, or I don't know if you guys have feelings as far as Jill or Mike, or from your aspects, what you've seen work or not work in your districts.
Actually, I had a question on this. I was wondering if a lot of these are performance tasks, and I was wondering what the criteria for these projects, is that built in, like the question we ask all the kids all the time, how good is good enough? I was just wondering how that was built into your portfolios.
As far as the work that the kids have done?
Yes.
Well, there's two aspects of that. Again, one is the idea that the formal assessments that we do district-wide. So, for example, every 8th grader does a certain thing for language arts or for math, whatever it is. Those would be in what we consider the education portfolio. So those would be in that list that's kind of the spreadsheet list. What gets pulled from there to the web page version, the showcase version, is more up to the more up to the student themselves, because that's the one they're going to showcase. So they may not want to show their writing because it's not as good as maybe their video production or maybe their artwork or whatever that their focus is. We do use web pages, obviously, to do projects. I think, Chris, right now, you're doing an author's study or something for Mr.
Yeah, I'm doing a genre study right now for Miss Flannery, and that'll actually probably go up on my website, because it's usually I take the biggest and the best to put on there, because that's what you want everyone to see, not that one little paper that you got a bad grade on. You want all the stuff that's going to really show who you are.
And walk me through a little bit through that process as far as this project. So I know it's a website, Google site. So what else is included? How's that going to work?
It's usually we like right now we have to read 4 books, same author, same genre, and then we're going to write a bunch of papers on it in Google Docs, and then at the end we usually make a site about it, and sometimes some teachers have it like a kind of a template, and then let the students go from there, or some let us build it from scratch. So we'll end up having all our plot summaries on there, add pictures and videos to explain what the plot is, and the themes, and then a lot of history from that genre. So if you want again, pictures and videos to explain that. So it's not just text you're reading on the site. It's pictures and videos that explain what the text is kind of saying, that goes along the same line. Like my freshman year, some people did songs to, kind of get the feel of what this book means, or like pictures or a scene from a movie that might again explain what really this book meant to you. And that's kind of like one example of one of the assignments we do. I mean, there's tons of different ones that are on there. I mean, like math and doing our midterms online. We had a paper copy so they could have our work, but at the end, they take the answers with all our work so that we can look it up online, and then we get the laptops out and put in all of the answers that we got, A, B, C, or D, and then it was automatically graded right there for the teachers.
I do think it's important to showcase, if whenever possible, not kind of just the rote work itself, like kind of the worksheet type based stuff, but the ability for students to showcase stuff that's a little bit more creative, a little bit further beyond what they're normally asked to do. We just had an assignment recently that was from our English class at the high school to take a Homer Winslow image in conjunction with the Portland Museum of Art and create basically a story about that, and using iMovie to kind of using layers of music and sound effects, that kind of stuff. And what happened is some of our best and brightest students are so very good at kind of playing the game of school. Some of our getting used to doing kind of that rote stuff, could spit back whatever you asked them, had the biggest trouble with this kind of assignment because it was pure creativity. There wasn't necessarily a right or wrong answer. There were certainly levels of quality, but there wasn't like, this is the way we want to see it done. It's here's the tools to work with it, here's the pieces, and what you do with it is what kind of showcases your ability level. And I want our students to kind of get a little bit uncomfortable sometimes and kind of push beyond what they're normally asked to do. And ways to showcase that, if it's, again, a website or a blog post or whatever it is, anytime we can showcase that, it's that much better. Mike, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about what you guys are doing portfolio-wise in your district? Oh.
Here we go. Might help if I unmute myself. We've been mostly it started with staff, and our teachers were doing that. So I worked with my administrators, both the principal and assistant principal. We created a template and shared that with the staff. We did that last year, and worked out really well. And the interesting thing that we found from it, though, is that it really changed the process of evaluation from being something that's handed down to you to something that became much more of a conversation.
Looks like Mike's freezing a little bit there. Sorry, everyone, for that. I guess, did anyone else want to chime in on anything here?
I'll just talk about that as far in the sense of conversation, as far as, again, getting students as part of this process. For them to own their work, which sounds such, kind of silly, but, it's really huge. If you think about the kind of traditional game of school and how that works, a teacher gives an assignment, the student does it. If it makes it home, it might make it in the backpack. Usually it makes it on the trash can, but if it makes it home, the kind of the nirvana is the refrigerator door, homework nirvana, where it kind of can live and end up. And basically nowadays, because of our technology, I just don't think that's good enough. I think we really need to be able to showcase that and show it to whatever it should be. I mean, if it's a public presentation, great. Or if it's not, at least, have that kind of follow them through. And we can now, basically, and that's where we should be headed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see a lot of questions coming in. I guess I should just go to those, and then when Mike comes back, he'll continue. So back to a question on domain names. Someone said, Paul Barrett said, wow, domain names for each student. Do you get bulk pricing for this? And what percentage of students or families pick up the domain name after the initial year subsidized by the district?
Good questions. First of all, no, I wish we did. I've actually tried to get bulk pricing, and I haven't had anybody people, just so an aside, but there are people who buy thousands of domain names, kind of cyber squatters. So for us to say, hey, we need 150 for our graduating seniors, they don't really care. But that said, what we use, we actually use a service called 1&1, not to give them a plug because there's all kinds, pros and cons. One thing I do like about them is typically near the end of the year, they put their .info domains on sale for 99 cents. So it's $1 a student. We have had to, and sometimes they don't always do that, and sometimes in the past we've actually done it where we've had to pay the full, $9 or whatever. But really, cheaper than a monogram pen, you can buy a student, their web domain that goes for everybody all over the world. The other piece of that, as far as follow-up, we haven't had a ton. We don't have, I don't know, 90% or whatever the percentage is. But I will tell you this: one of my most resistant students when I had him in computer class, like he was not interested in computer or anything. And he said, Mr. Kelley, I don't want to do this stuff. And I said, just humor me. Okay, just do it because right now, because it's kind of the course, and let me ask you. And he said, sure, and he did it. And he didn't, that year was fine, but the following year he came back to me. He said, you know, Mr. Kelley, my grandfather asked me to do the website for my snowmobile club. Now, this was something that was very personal to him, right? I mean, and it gave him, he was like a sophomore or freshman, and it gave him kind of this kind of authority in his peer group here of all these adults who wanted a snowmobile club website. So I said, absolutely, let me help you do that. And that's kind of what I'm going for, is this idea. They may not necessarily think they need it or want it yet, but once they have it and it's there and it's theirs in their hand, and again, for $1 a student, it's not a huge outlay, then the kids that do want it and run with it, I have had students in the past make businesses with it, kind of like not huge businesses, but little local things. I have a student right now, he wants to go into video production, so he actually asked if he could have, he didn't want his name as the domain. I can tell you because I'm sure he'd let me tell you. His last name is Kasperzak. And it was too hard for people to spell, so he did Kaz Media Services because he wants to do video production, so we thought that'd be a little bit easier to market. So that's what we want. I want kids to be thinking of those kind of things, you know, moving forward.
Yeah. I see that Mike's joined us back. Mike, did you want to add anything else to what you were saying earlier?
Sure. I'm not sure where I got cut off. I all of a sudden got hung up on the Hangout here. So. But basically, I was talking about how our staff evaluation process through these electronic portfolios has become much more of a conversation. The administrators sign up for notifications for each of the portfolios so that they know instantly when a teacher has added anything to their portfolio. The portfolio sections are professional development. There's a professional development post each month. Student work forms, they do 2 of those each year where they look really closely at a particular unit that they do and the outcomes of learning and articulate that in their portfolios. Plus, they also then will do student and parent feedback. The parent feedback they only have to do once every 3 years. And so we actually did, after last year's pilot, I sat down with our administrators and rebuilt the portfolios because our portfolio process is a 3-year cycle. So we turn them into a 3-year template, and it's been really successful.
Cool.
Awesome. Continue with questions here. John Calvert wanted to ask, when do students start building their portfolios? Is it always via sites, and do you require certain elements?
Good question. We've gone back and forth with that as far as what makes the best sense, and I won't say we've solved that. Like I said, this is the definitive thing. Typically, it's been teacher-driven. Like I had some teachers that want it to look a certain way, you know, and be a certain thing. If you think about it, one of the ways that we traditionally cut stuff up is here's your 5th grade year, here's your 6th grade year, here's your 7th grade year. And so one of the things we initially want to do is get away from that, to say like, well, it doesn't matter. If you're going to show, here's examples of you being a good communicator, and you know, let's put all the different examples in there, which sounds good, but in reality what happens is when kids or parents want to go back and see the stuff they did, they think in terms of, oh yeah, what did you do that 5th grade year? What was that big project in science or whatever? So we've kind of pulled back a little bit from that and we're back to, you know, basically cutting up by grade level and in sites. Now, as far as using sites over something else, you know, some teachers have I've had teachers have each of the kids create a blog using Blogger, and that's what they use kind of to showcase stuff. So it's been a little bit open-ended. Obviously, the educational portfolio piece isn't open-ended. That's really the work needs to be done, but it doesn't really matter what form the work is. If it's a spreadsheet or a video or whatever, it won't matter because basically when they put the link in, it's accessible by the teacher anyway. So once it's in the cloud, you know, it's all good.
And then Mary Pat Lichtman asked, how do you handle security issues? Are there concerns from students and parents on the information being sent on the internet, even if some security is evident?
Yep, we've had this conversation just recently with our pre-K group. We had, you know, obviously we have paperwork that goes home and parents sign in and very explaining what's going on. And I'll talk about that. For example, we just had students, they were recorded them reading, for example, and that recording would go under their own personal account. Is it on the internet? Yes. Is it in a secure situation where as far as the, you know, the password, that kind of stuff? Absolutely. And you could, somebody more versed in this than I could talk about Google security and how good it is and that kind of stuff. But we also do the avatar name thing. So again, even if you knew that a student had a video somewhere online and you could get past the security, you'd have to know that their avatar name was Blue, you know, cat or whatever, whatever it would be. So there's layers upon layers, and I've yet to have any parent that I've had that was really concerned. We honor their wishes and don't do it. And then what happens is when we come back later and they see their other kids' stuff, being shown, other students in the classroom, they say, "Oh, I want that." And I said, "Well, you said you didn't want that." And they said, "Well, that's what I didn't know. That's what you meant." So I haven't had anybody yet that's like, once they've kind of understood what we're talking about, they balked at it.
What Carol Titleman asked, what is the most difficult work example to digitize and why? And any suggestions?
The most difficult one. I don't know. Chris, you have any ideas?
Probably one of the hardest is the kind of art and math work piece because it's pictures instead of just typing a paper or already doing it online, because a lot of our stuff is already digitized online, so it's not as hard. Like with the math, you have to take a picture of the work, or like if we had an art thing, we'd take a picture with the iPod and email it to ourselves, and that's honestly that's extensive as it goes. It's not really that hard of a process, especially at the high school level, because all the papers and presentations we do are already online. So it's really, from there, it's just as easy as putting it on the website.
And I'll throw out there for our elementary teachers, if it's possible, absolutely get student helpers as well. I mean older kids. Like one thing we do at one of our schools is we have a couple of our older kids, our 8th grade students, who they have laptops, go down to the kindergarten level, and they're doing the process of helping record or helping this. And if it's not another whole layer of complexity for the teacher, it's more likely to happen. So whenever you can have older kids helping younger kids, it's a win-win for everybody, and it just makes it so much smoother. And we've done that, a number of times, and I highly recommend that. I see Jill nodding. You agree?
Someone asked about reporting. How have teachers and principals handled the lack of reporting in a portfolio system built on top of Google Sites? So for example, in our system, it allows for teachers and principals to query and see which students have met certain proficiency requirements.
Yep. And again, think of it in terms of 2 layers, where the first layer is simply seeing the portfolio work there, and that's basically like a spreadsheet list, for lack of a better term. And that is the fact that, 1, that's there, and then 2, the work itself, it's a click away, and then you can pull it up, and those are linked to the scores that the teacher did themselves. So the teacher scored that and assessed that. Another piece of this, and I'm not going to go too much into detail here for this session, but this afternoon at 2 o'clock, I'm going to be talking about managing online courses, and of course online courses are strictly digital. There's no other option here. Your kids, you're not going to see the kids face to face. And in that, we're actually building or working on this year an assessment structure or reporting structure that isn't straight up, ABC, or even to meet standard, does not meet standard. It's built around the assumption that if you know that everything's digitized and you can expect kids to do, video work and other kinds of those kinds of things, there are certain assumptions that you can make, and you can build that into the reporting structure. So as far as being able to showcase students as workers, showcase the videos that they've done, and have it all automated. And that's the kind of stuff that I'll be talking about that next session this afternoon.
Awesome. So Joshua Catton is asking about the scope of portfolios. It seems that students are collecting work in their portfolios from year to year, but work is assessed by individual instructors sort of as you on a as-you-go basis. Is there a sort of final portfolio presentation for seniors?
There is, actually. We have senior presentations, what they call them. The thing that we haven't done yet, and this is, I talked to the administration here at our high school, is students have them, and they have them as available, but we haven't solely made the presentation on their portfolio, and that's where I'd like to get to, where that is the basis of your presentation. Students have been able to do other things with this to show other, their ability levels in other ways, but I'd really like to have whatever they're doing. I don't care, they can still do whatever project they're doing, but it has to appear on that portfolio, and we just haven't done that yet. I believe that's in the plans, but we haven't accomplished that yet.
Mm-hmm. A couple of questions about Google Books, back when you were showing that. A lot of people loved that idea, actually. But John asked, are there any SIPA concerns, and how does the district handle that?
In terms of what?
He didn't clarify, so I guess I'll wait for him to repost.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll just throw out there, like if you look at I usually get the legal answer, question a lot as far as is it legal to have kids have accounts, and they bring up the 13 or under thing as far as age goes. And my understanding of this, I'm no lawyer, I'll make this right off the bat, but my understanding is 13 or under, one of the reasons why they have that issue is that you cannot get parental consent if you are, for example, Facebook or some of these other services, because you're not going to see every person. If you are in a school system, we get parental consent all the time. We call them permission slips. So with that, it falls under the auspices of that Google Apps for Education domain. And so as far as the books things, it's the same thing. This stuff is not public. I mean, it's in that kind of closed garden so that the teachers and our students inside of that system can see it. We actually don't turn it public until the end of the high school, end of high school as far as we make it so it can be public. I guess I'll put it that way.
And then someone asked about the assessment hand-in form. Bob Rowan asked, do you set up separate forms for each student, or do they all share with the same form, and then the results are all in the same spreadsheet?
The latter. You have one form, and the student puts in their name, they put in their, the copy and paste the link to the actual work, and you can have it set up, so if you would say this is assignment 1, this is assignment 2, whatever you call it, from that it actually builds a filter list for you that you can kind of choose what you want. And then at that point you can say, okay, I want to look at my period 2, assignment 3, and then it'll format by that.
Awesome. And then Lannon Heflin asked, please elaborate on the process for students moving their content into their own space. How labor intensive is this, and how much time do you allow for it?
Excellent question. The way that I would like to have it done and the way that it's in reality is capable of two different things. Theoretically, you should be able to take, for example, an entire big folder of all your stuff in Google Docs, share that with your outside account, and make that be the owner. That sounds, in theory, like it would work. In reality, it doesn't seem to. I'm not sure if it's something we're doing wrong, whatever. It just doesn't work. So what we end up doing is having the kids download their stuff. There's a service, if you go to google.com/takeout, you can download all your images, all your docs, whatever, and click a button, and it'll make an archive of that. And then you have to re-upload that to the other account. It's a little bit of a pain, but it works. And we certainly can't do it all at once, because if you have 100 kids and they're all downloading multi-gig downloads at once, it's just going to kill the network. So.
I also see some questions coming in on Twitter. I think we're about to wrap up in about a minute or two, so I'll try to get one more good question. Let's see. So someone asked about the legwork for just getting everyone to buy into this, teachers, principals, parents, students. I know you've talked a little bit about this, but just to kind of wrap up, and I guess, how do you get everyone in the community to really, buy into this and make the most out of it?
Yeah, good question. You can't initially. I mean, the idea of trying to get everybody on board to bring everybody at once is I don't know that. I mean, maybe it's possible, but it's harder. What I believe and how I feel is I start with the students. So in the sense, if I have a class of students, let's say I have 20 students, and they're on board, like I'm having them use Google Docs, for example, we're storing stuff, whatever. When those students go next year to the next grade teacher, it's harder for them to say no, because their kids already know how to do this, and if they need training, you basically have to train one person in that room, not 21 people. And with that, the kids are kind of spreading it out, and they want to do this stuff, and parents want to see it, and then you now have 2 classes and 3 classes and so forth. And so as the wave comes up of students that are able to do this, then that kind of spreads. And I also think that's why it's really important to start as young as you can. Like I said earlier, we have, pre-K kids have accounts. They're not using them. But if their parents come to expect that they'll be able to log in to see their child's videos of them reading, then they'll want to see that in 1st grade, in 2nd grade, in 3rd grade, in 10th grade, and so forth, all the way through. So we want to build that kind of structure into it so the teachers are expecting it. And I've had some of my most resistant teachers, if they know that the kids in the classroom can help them with the tech piece of it, then they're willing to jump on. And I can't highlight that enough as far as having students as tech support, having them as part of the solution. It's a resource that you want to use if you're in education.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for all the questions. I guess, Kern, do you want to close with any thoughts or comments?
I'll just say I'll do my best to go into the stream, and if there's questions that didn't get answered, I'll try to answer them there, or however I can do that. And you're welcome to to contact me and answer my questions going forward.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Kern, for taking the time to share what you all are doing with portfolios. It's very great information. I think a lot of people found it very helpful and inspiring. So thank you for taking the time to share that. And we look forward to your later session today on online courses, which is kind of related to what we're talking about here. Thanks to everyone in Hangout for sharing your thoughts and participating. And thanks to everyone out there on the live stream for tuning in. We'll wrap up now, and have a great day, everyone.